What if you didn't have to choose between the work you love and the life you want? What if the goal wasn't balance, integration? Welcome back to Daily Power Boost. For the last 9 days, we've been rebuilding. We named why rest alone won't heal what hustle broke. We learned why stillness feels like stagnation and why it's actually revelation. We detoxed from the need to earn your exhale. We reclaimed the space you shrunk out of. We discovered why momentum sometimes looks like maintenance. We stopped leading from proving and started trusting your authority. We audited where your life doesn't match your values. We learned that boundaries aren't selfish, they're sacred. And yesterday, we built rhythms that honor your actual capacity. Today, we integrate it all because this was never about recovering who you were. It was always about becoming who you're meant to be. A few years ago, someone asked me what success looked like, and I gave them the answer I'd learned to give: revenue, impact, scale, reach. But the truth? When I looked at my life, success felt like walking a tightrope: work on one side, life on the other. And I was constantly trying to balance between the two without falling. Then one day it hit me. I wasn't supposed to be balancing. I was supposed to be integrating. Because the version of success I was chasing required me to split myself in half: professional Shawn and personal Shawn, leader Shawn and father Shawn. And I was exhausted trying to be both without letting either one bleed into the other. But here's what I learned: the goal was never separation, the goal was alignment. Here's what happens when you try to balance instead of integrate: you compartmentalize. You show up one way at work, another way at home. You perform one identity in public and hide another in private. And the cognitive load of managing all those versions of yourself, it's exhausting. Because you're not living one life, you're living like three or four and pretending they don't affect each other. But they do. The stress from work shows up in your tone at home. The distance in your marriage shows up in your leadership. The lack of rest shows up in your decision making. You can't separate them, so why are you trying? Let's reframe what alignment actually is. Alignment isn't about separating your work and your life. It's about building a life where work flows from who you are and not against it. When your work is aligned, you don't need to perform a different version of yourself to lead well. You don't resent your calendar because it reflects your values. You don't collapse at the end of a day because you've been holding a mask in place. You show up as one person, integrated, whole, present. And that version of you, that's the one people actually want to follow. Here's a truth most leaders miss: people don't follow perfect, they follow real. And real doesn't show up when you're splitting yourself into pieces trying to be everything to everyone. Real shows up when you stop performing and start integrating. When the way you lead your team matches the way you lead your family, and the way you treat yourself matches the way you tell others to treat themselves, when your private life and your public leadership aren't at war, they're in rhythm, that's not balance, that's integrity. And integrity is the foundation of every leader who lasts. Here's what I want you to know as we close this arc: recovery isn't about getting back to who you were before things broke. Because who you were before, that version was already running on fumes, already splitting themselves in half, and already headed toward the wall. You just didn't see it yet. Recovery is about becoming someone new, someone who doesn't need to prove their worth through productivity, who can sit in stillness without panic, who knows when to sprint and when to sustain, whose work reflects their values, not someone else's definition of success. That version of you, they don't need balance, they need alignment. And that's what you've been building over the last 10 days. Here's your final practice for this arc. Write down this question: what does an aligned life look like for me? Not balanced, not perfect, not Instagram worthy, aligned, where your work, your rest, your relationship, your values, they all flow from the same source and they all reflect the same person. You don't have to have an answer today. I want you to sit with the question, because the leaders who are changing the world aren't the ones who have it all together. They're the ones brave enough to live as one person instead of 3 or 4. This was the aligned leader. What happens when your work finally fits your life? We just closed a 10-day arc on recovery, rhythm, and rebuilding. Tomorrow, we're starting something new. But for today, I just want you to take a breath. You've done the work. You've sat in the stillness. You've named the misalignment. You've set boundaries, and you've built rhythms. Now trust what's emerging, because the version of you on the other side of this arc, they don't need permission anymore, because they already have it. With strength and heart, I'm Shawn Michael. Stay close. Thanks for tuning in to Daily Power Boost. Ignite your potential. Remember, transformation starts with action. So take today's insight, make it your own, and awaken your inner potential. Because remember, greatness begins within. Catch you tomorrow for your next Power Boost.